I'm joined today by Mr. Brian Rosen, who's the CEO of EBSphere. EBSphere is a software solution company for the financial services industry. And Brian and I are discussing, the retirement industry specifically, systems, administration systems and things, but also, ways of coping with various things like the two-pot system and a lot of the changes to legislation that has come in recently. So, Brian, delighted to have you here. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks very much for having us.
So, Brian, with all the changes and things coming into the industry, a lot of things, how do we handle it? I mean, from an administration point of view, there's old legacy systems, there's new ways of doing things. How do we respond from a technology point of view to all these changes that are coming?
Chris, it's an important question because ultimately in the industry, the only way that we're going to be able to facilitate the changes is coming up with new ways in the technology aspect of it. And the problem with a lot of legacy type systems is that unless they've been built for the core purpose of the legislation, which was unforeseen at that point in time, it's actually very difficult to accommodate it. So what you need to do is you need to be very reactive when it comes to the design and the implementation of the changes that come through in the technology. Fortunately, because we're in a space where the technology that's been developed is relatively new from a whole design perspective. It allows us then to accommodate these changes with very little breakages in the software. So in layman's terms, instead of re-engineering the entire software, if you've got the correct architecture in place, any kind of legislative changes that come through can be implemented into the technology that you have. But you have to have that design. And the problem is with older systems is you can't make those changes very quickly. So you end up breaking a lot of things. And by breaking things, you start creating knock-on effects of, incorrect processing and seriously technical kind of workarounds there that make the whole job a lot more difficult than it is. So we found that looking forward, I think we're in a good position to kind of accommodate all of these changes that are being presented. But having said that, we need to know what those changes are in a very clear and concise way, and I think that part of it is lacking a little bit.
So, Brian, talk to us about the changes that are coming through, and how does that impact the industry? What are those specifically?
Okay, so Chris, what we're looking at is the whole implementation of the two-pot system. Now, fundamentally, the whole process that they're implementing and they're wanting to implement is actually very sound and makes a lot of sense for the South African industry. It would actually kind of get us to that holy grail of proper preservation, which is the ultimate goal of both government and from private sector, as well as the members themselves. If members can retire in a sound financial environment, it makes a lot more sense. Now, we've kind of taken a long time to get to this position where we're working on this two-part system. The whole idea, like I said, it makes a lot of financial sense to split it out and allow members the ability to access that part and then preserve part of that benefit. The issues that come in from our side is that they've made the suggestions, they've implemented, they've already moved the date 1 year in a further 1 year later. So from that perspective, that's fine. But they need to be very clear on all of the items. Now, from a high level perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And they've done that very well. But it now comes to the nitty gritty, the details, which is what essentially as system providers for the industry have to really take care of. It's not a case of, it sort of works like this. We got to know every single little facet of the way that the implementation takes place and what changes are required, going down to tax calculations, to the ability for having divorce orders. They've mentioned defined benefit, defined contribution. All of that's been quite loose. And I think that part of it is lacking a bit. The guys need to sit down. There are a lot of working committees in doing it. But, before throwing out dates and before kind of getting the whole industry in a major tither and ultimately members which is the people at the end of the day that need to understand what's going on. They need to be very clear, and a lot more engagement is required. And that part of, for me, is probably critical to making this a success. It will happen and we get there, but we kind of end up falling over our feet because we don't have a very clear picture of where we need to get to. So putting in the technology, getting all of that is paramount, but more importantly, having the guidance of exactly how this whole system is going to be working at a granular level, for me, is key to making it a full success.
Yeah, fair enough. And as always, the devil's in the detail. Right, so Brian, so in addition to the two-pot system and all the little devil in the detail stuff we spoke about earlier, what else is coming down the track, I mean, from a legislative point of view?
Okay, because what happens is now that we're going on to the two-pot system, there's going to be a lot more interaction with members in order to facilitate this possibly once a year payment that needs to take place to members. Immediately you have that, you've got a lot more member engagement. So from a member engagement perspective, the administrators start becoming a lot closer to the members, which means that the aspect from connectivity between the two parties is paramount. You know, obviously to secure the members' records, make sure that you're dealing with the correct members, and that we're going to be using technology a lot for. What's also happened in the meantime is legislatively they've required a lot more information that's coming through from the employer into the fund administrator. So collecting a lot more information is mandatory. You know, that in itself has its own kind of cons in the fact that you can't not complete a contribution update because you're missing a lot of information. You know, sometimes you have to get through the process, you have to do the investment. So it is important to provide all of that information, but it has got the knock-on effect is that if we don't have all of this personal information, and we've spoken about POPIA in the last couple of years and the importance of the member security, which is obviously critical, and I think we've bedded that down as an industry as a whole. We've done a pretty good job with that. But what's important is that once we've got this personal information, we've got all of these details, we can then facilitate the payment process. Mitigating fraud obviously is the big aspect of it, because now you're dealing with a lot more payments, you're dealing with a lot more individuals than rather just the employer. And the employer is not going to be act as the go-between in this entire process. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on the fund administrator to be able to facilitate the payments and interact closely with the members. So we're building a lot of the technology around that interaction, and it's important to do that, because if we don't, you're going to have the administrators are going to be inundated with a lot of requests, and it's obviously going to increase costs. And the whole thing at the end of the day is we're looking to reduce costs and not increase them. So, you know, again, everybody turns to technology to say, right, this is how you're going to be able to accommodate it, and what is the best way we're going to do to facilitate it.
So Brian, I mean, all these things that we do in terms of the technology developments and all these fancy systems and everything, all kind of become meaningless in a way if you cannot let them reach your furthest of members that are furthest away, and working on maybe USSD sort of systems and things like that, not using or having access to the latest technology. How do you see that panning out going forward? Going forward, the technology is critical, and the only way that can happen is from both an infrastructure and a government perspective in order to roll that out to the members. And, you know, Chris, you were mentioning earlier about the way that the infrastructure side of it from big telecoms are trying to bring themselves from metropolitan areas into the deep rural areas. And that's obviously critical to try and touch all the members, you know, virtually across the entire country. So, you know, you look at the ways of communicating, the very basic means on a cell phone device of using USSD technology, sending out SMS messages. You know, these things are still prevalent. However, you know, they relatively costly if you want to
send communication out on an ongoing basis and really try and get that interaction side of it. But the means of it have been very successful. But we need to kind of extrapolate that into the next step, the next phase of the way that the communication world is going. So you're not only looking at that, you're going onto your mobile devices. Smart devices are amazing to do that, but then the usage of that, and for people to be able to use smart devices, we need more of those. It needs to be more cost effective. We also need to be able to use means of the WhatsApp communication is unbelievable. We've been using that, and the opening up of the interaction on a WhatsApp communication has been phenomenal. Members have got that already, are used to that social media, social interaction. So we need to move that into the business world and use it more and more. And the more that you can interact like that from a virtual perspective, it will reduce the cost. It will also make the lives of the people trying to, instead of getting into a taxi for 6 hours to come into the head office to see where their benefit is, all of this could be done from their house. So, these things are important. We can provide the technology and we can facilitate the means to it, but the infrastructure and the whole setup needs to be there. And hopefully that's where it's going. It is taking years, and we have to look on both sides of the coin to say, right, that it's all wonderful to build these things going forward, but we also need to look at the here and now and say, what is it that members have got? And, and it's one thing trying to accommodate 1% of the population that has got the means to communicate in this way. And obviously we've got to look at the 99, and hopefully that 99% will open up very soon. So, it's a very, very fast changing world now. So hopefully it's not, in the not too distant future, we'll be able to create that virtual interaction when you can literally stick on your VR device, walk into a VR office and speak face to face with someone, whether it's an AR robot or whether it's a person on the other end of it sitting somewhere else on the other side of the country. It's all, we're not that far away from all of these things.
Absolutely. But there's also, and as you mentioned, there's also the domino effect of you've got the systems, the technology, and all of that. But again, that is reliant on an infrastructure, and that infrastructure by itself is then again reliant on investments into that infrastructure via and building that up. So it's the whole domino effect that I'm speaking about. They're all interdependent on one another as we roll into the future. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. It's been delightful having you online, talking with me, and a very interesting topic. And I really look forward to chatting to you again going into the future. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chris. It's been good.